Can we please settle? So we'll start the post-lunch session. So in the first half, we basically got into the details of the two revenue streams, and now we are going to be looking at the third prospective revenue stream, which is supposed to be coming from the monetization of the green attributes. And this is where there are two areas which are of utmost importance. One is the introduction of the CBG blending obligations, which is expected, not expected, it is going to be implemented from 1st April 25 onwards. And then around that, we have the topic of the renewable gas certificates. So my friends, colleagues, Vasundhara as well as Ravi, they're going to be talking about it. So I'll request Vasundhara to start, and then Ravi will be taking you through the details. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and this is an especially tricky session post-lunch, so I will try to keep it as interesting and interactive as possible. Quickly taking a minute to introduce myself. My name is Dr. Vasundhara. I head regulations and policy for a technology company. I have 20 years of experience in renewable policy and regulation formation. My involvement in the RGC and the obligation framework comes from my experience in the renewable sector. And I want to start by giving you some statistics from the renewable sector since inception. In the year 2003, the Government of India announced something called the Renewable Purchase Obligations. Yeah, I'm sure most of us are familiar with that. What Renewable Purchase Obligations is it put an obligation on certain entities to buy solar and wind electricity. And that really was the birth of RE sector in India as we know it. In 2003, the RPOs were announced at 2% on distribution companies, which means that electricity suppliers, if they are supplying 100 units of power, at least 2 units have to come from wind energy, right? And when this announcement came, and we were a part of the industry back then, we were wondering how we will achieve this. How the 2% RPO obligation will be met by generation of wind electricity. Please remember back then, the renewable electricity was priced at nothing less than 7 to 8 rupees a unit, right? Today, in 2025, almost 20 years later, these obligations have moved to roughly 30%. And the latest Government of India notification says that RPO obligation will move to 43% by 2033. What this means for the common man is that if a distribution entity, a power supplying entity, is supplying 100 units of power, 43 out of that has to come from solar or wind or battery. And the reason I'm talking about this obligation in such detail is because we are seeing similar indications on the CBG sector. What happened to RE 15-20 years back is a similar set of framework that the government is trying to announce for the CBG sector. Last year, the Ministry of Petroleum came out with a notification which said that starting 1st of April 2025, certain entities, CNG, PNG distributors, will have to mandatorily blend CBG. And that's the birth of the blending obligation in the CBG sector. So if what RE did from 2003 to today, going from 2% to 43%, there is definitely room for growth for this sector, and it is going to be explosive in my limited experience of being in RE policy. So with that, I want to start with talking about the blending obligation first. As it stands today, I'll come back to the slide. As it stands today, for this fiscal, which is FY25, the blending obligation has been kept voluntary, which means the CNG, PNG entities, by their own interest, will pick up CBG and will offtake CBG. But starting the next fiscal, the obligation is set at 1%. And it's a graded obligation that moves to roughly 5% by FY29. The association has done its maths, and we have some numbers which we will project, and it shows that the ability to supply this much CBG is going to definitely outstrip the demand that's coming online. So the case we are making is that maybe these obligations are too modest. Maybe these obligations can be revised upwards, and maybe these obligations can be expanded to other offtake entities as well, not only CNG and PNG. I'll go back. So what is this concept of green component, right? Because it's a green gas, there is a necessity to bifurcate between the green component and the grey component. And we're all aware that today there's a lot of discussion on monetizing the green component. Yeah, even in carbon projects, renewable projects, we are trying to monetize the green attribute of a particular product, right? So, like Ashish was saying earlier, for any CBG producer, there are typically 3 revenue streams. The first is the gas offtake, which we've discussed. The second is the monetization of the digestate, which we've discussed. And the third is the monetization of the green attribute. So as per the government circular, there is a requirement to monetize the green attribute, and therefore you need to bifurcate between the grey molecule and the green molecule in biomethane. So conceptually, we are looking at monetizing the green attribute of biomethane, which requires us to unbundle the methane from the green attribute, right? Coming back to the obligation, if obligated entities have to procure up to 5% of CBG and they are physically not able to procure it, because maybe they are located in areas where feedstock availability is constrained, cascade-based deliveries cannot happen, and the grid has not reached, then how do you meet this obligation? And that is where your green gas certificate plays a role, right? So what we are essentially saying is that the renewable gas certificate, conceptually, is a certificate which can be monetized for the green attribute of biomethane, right? It is a tradable instrument which will be traded over a platform, and that's why my colleague joins me from the Indian Gas Exchange. As per the government order, IGX is designated as the trading platform over which the certificate trading will happen. How does the RGC help? It will enable the obligated entities to meet their obligations without necessarily purchasing CBG. Only in those areas where CBG delivery is not possible, right? It will serve as a proof of purchase of biogas, and there are several benefits that we will talk about as we go along. One important consideration I want to bring to the audience is that the monetization of the green attribute through the green certificate should be taken as an independent activity from the carbon market trading that will happen. And I want to quickly make a point here. We may or may not be aware that the Indian carbon mandate has been notified. There is a carbon credit trading scheme that is going to be launched. And under the Indian carbon market, there are two markets. One is a compliance market where 9 sectors in India are going to be obligated to reduce their emission intensities. And there is a voluntary market where certain technologies will voluntarily register and be eligible to get carbon offsets. CBG has been notified as a voluntary market technology, which means that developers, if they're able to prove eligibility, if they're able to prove additionality of carbon footprint removal, then they will be eligible to participate in the voluntary market and get carbon offsets. So coming back to the green gas certificate, it is an over and above mechanism from the Indian carbon market voluntary technologies. And at the proposal stage, we want to keep it separate. So what does this mean for a producer effectively is that not only do you get revenues from sale of gas, not only do you get revenues from digestate sale in whatever shape and form you do, you will also be eligible for revenues by monetizing the certificate over an exchange, and you should also be able to get the carbon offsets under the ICM mandate, Indian carbon mandate, right? Yes, I was expecting.
Just to clarify that though, how can you prove additionality if
Yeah.
you're getting the revenue from the certificate?
So, we've already had these discussions. We started discussing this with the Bureau of Energy Efficiency, which is the nodal agency for doing the carbon market mechanism, the point of additionality will remain to be proven by the plant. Obviously, a plant will not be able to take both the monetization at the same time, right? Unless we integrate the gas certificate into the carbon methodology. As of today, the methodology under ICM for CBG has not been notified. They are looking for methodologies that from the UN FCCC framework to be adopted for the CBG plants. So the methodology needs to be written, and if we don't have a ready reference, we can even propose that. The Bureau is open to taking comments and recommendations on new methodologies if they're not already existing. So in the voluntary market, they have notified RE, grid-connected RE, hydrogen through electrolysis or biomass, CBG, biofuels, largely these. And if a methodology is not there readily to be adopted, we can recommend. So there is window for us to maybe write out the methodology and give them, considering the gas certificates will also be launched hopefully also be launched in the next 3 to 4 months. Yeah. Okay. This slide presents the benefits of the green gas certificate both to the consumers of gas, which are the obligated entities, as well as to the producers who are generating this gas. To the obligated entities, it will provide, to the producers, to the CBG producer, like I said, it provides an additional revenue stream, complementing the revenues they are getting from gas sale and digestate sale. Because it is a revenue stream, it also improves the project economics and therefore provides a market signal to the supply side. Right? And third, it monetizes the green attribute in biomethane. So these are the 3 benefits that accrues to the CBG producer. On the consumption side, people who are obligated to consume CBG, the benefits are much larger. First, it helps them to fulfill the obligation that has been put on them. The 1%, 3%, 5%, it helps them to show compliance. And this is something that happened in the RE markets as well, where distribution companies would just purchase a certificate from the exchange and say that I've been able to buy RE, because otherwise physically it was difficult for them. Imagine a Odisha distribution company wanting to say I've procured wind power, but there's no possibility of installing wind in Odisha back then. Right? So they would just buy a certificate and show the compliance. So that's first. Second, voluntary compliances can be done. Third and most importantly, for areas where CBG cannot reach, those obligated entities can buy the certificate and show compliance. Fourth, in certain areas where it is difficult to produce CBG, the offtake entity can show compliance and may not even have to incur the transmission charges. Right? So it is a way to show compliance without adding to the cost. And fifth, because the certificate will have a validity, the revenue from the sale of certificate is over a period of time. The monetization can happen over a window. It is not something that has to happen immediately. Right? Now I'll cover this slide and then hand over to Ravi, who will present the technical details of the trading mechanism. But what are we seeing in terms of the market estimate for CBG going forward, at least in the next fiscal year? For FY 25-26, the working that we've done at the association is indicating that we expect about 8.4 MMT of CBG consumption across CNG, PNG entities who have been currently nominated as obligated entities. As of next fiscal, the obligation is at 1%. So if you calculate, the demand for CBG coming online in the next fiscal is between 200 to 250 TPD. And what we are understanding from the Govardhan portal and progress on CBG plant production, that roughly 110 to 120 CBG plants should be operational by next year. And therefore, meeting the 1% obligation will not be a problem. And that's why we are suggesting that the obligations can be revised upwards to expand the demand, because we see the supply to come online. Of course, we've made our assumptions. Of course, we've made certain key observations on plant capacities, load factors, ramp ups, etc. But at this moment, the supply seems to be sufficiently available to meet the 1% obligation. So for FY25, we are expecting the market demand for CBG to match the supply. But going further, the obligations are going to increase to 3%, 5%, and the supply will also have to manifold increase accordingly. Now for the next fiscal, even though demand and supply will match, which means the production and demand will be almost equal, what about those obligated entities in areas where CBG delivery is not possible? Right? And there are going to be entities which will have this problem. So the green gas certificate will prove to be a mechanism through which this compliance can be fulfilled. Right? And just yesterday, we were able to do this full presentation with the ministry highlighting the merits. We are hopeful that this mechanism will be rolled out soon enough, because 1st of April 25 is when the obligation, at least on paper, are kicking in. And therefore, the implementation of this certificate, the release of the scheme guidelines, the notification of the obligated entities, all need to be expedited before the obligations at least kick in from 1st of April 25. So I will pause here. I will hand over to Ravi, and then maybe both Ravi and I can take questions at the end of the discussion. Yeah? Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Ravi. Before we start, I'll give a brief intro about myself and the company I represent. So about me, I have more than 10 years of experience now in the energy sector. I started with a state-owned company called Power Grid Corporation of India, which is India's biggest power transmission utility. Then I worked with consulting firms like PwC, CRISIL, where we worked across the energy sector value chain, specifically power, renewables, coal, oil and gas, telecom. And then I made a shift to Indian Energy Exchange, which is India's largest power trading exchange. And that was back in 2019. And then we worked on an idea similar to Indian Energy Exchange, which can be replicated in the natural gas sector. And that is when in 2020, we started the Indian Gas Exchange. So Indian Gas Exchange today is India's first and only authorized natural gas trading exchange. So what I mean by that is, one, it is authorized. That means there is regulation in place, which is taken care after by the sector regulator, which is PNGRB. So under those regulations, these are specifically Gas Exchange Regulations 2020. Under those regulations, we have taken authorization to run a gas trading exchange. And at the gas trading exchange, today we facilitate more or less two types of trading. One is for natural gas, which is in the trunk pipeline. So we facilitate trade for that gas. Second, we recently started trading for a small scale LNG, which is also called trucked LNG, or LNG which is carried in containers. So we recently started trading for that. Third, we have ideas to start trading specifically for green gas, which is CBG, or renewable natural gas, as others call it. And along with that, or even before that, we will start trading of CBG certificates, the subject of today. So that is on the trading front. If I give you a few numbers about IGX, India's total gas consumption today is close to about 200 million SCMD. Of the 200, we trade about 4 million SCMD. So we are around 3 to 4% of India's total gas consumption. But in terms of the short-term gas which is traded in India's market, we have a share of about 20% from that. And we have been growing year on year, and we have facilitated trades for all large companies which are there in the natural gas sector, be it at the supply side or at the buy side. So that is about gas exchange. Specifically coming to CBG and the RGC scheme and framework, which we started proposing about 1.5 years back to the ministry, and regulator and associated entities and associations like IFGE, and we made the initial framework along the lines of the REC framework, which was existent in power sector from long back. So along those lines, plus what has been happening globally also. So this is not something which has been invented new. This has been happening in the power sector for long back, and in the gas sector also globally. If you look, these type of schemes, they are already present at most of the places. They are called GOs, the guarantee of origins, and some places it is also called certificates. In India, we are calling them certificates, but the mechanism more or less remains the same. So we'll come to the mechanism, how all these things work. So I just put on a table who all entities are there as far as this scheme is concerned and what are their roles. So we start with obviously the ministry, which will be looking after all these guidelines and development on this policy or on this scheme, would be our Ministry of PNG. And as far as regulator is concerned, when it comes to regulations related to trading of certificates, because the trading, as has come out in the guidelines of ministry, is that trading will take place at the authorized gas exchange. So when it happens at the authorized gas exchange, because we are under regulatory purview of PNGRB, so the regulations on those trading will be framed by PNGRB. And the third, which is the most critical entity in this whole scheme, will be the registry operator, because all these certificates and trading of certificates will happen digitally. The certificates get generated digitally. All the records are kept digitally. They are monitored digitally. So all this has to be maintained in a registry, and the registry operator here has been called as the CRB, Central Repository Body, and this function has been given to a body called PPAC, Petroleum Planning and Analysis Cell, which is a wing of ministry itself. So all these functions, which, as I said, related to operations of the registry, related to registration of CBG projects in the registry, then the energy accounting and issuance of certificates as per that accounting, that has to be maintained by the registry operator or the PPAC. The trading of the certificates, as of now, which is there in the guidelines, is that it will be through authorized gas exchange. It will be through authorized gas exchange only. The benefit or the reason for that is you have central platform for trading, so all the liquidity gets pulled in at one place. So one, it is better, it works as a better tracing mechanism for certificates, and also provides the best price discovery, because the key idea of all this scheme is to give a credible price and additional revenue stream to CBG operators. So that is the idea on trading on the gas exchange. The eligible entities who will be eligible to get the certificates are obviously the CBG producers, and there is also a mandate which has been put in. So these certificates will serve two purposes actually, and has been explained by ma'am also. For the compliance part, the entities who have been given mandate, they can meet their mandates if they are not physically able to procure CBG, they can meet it through the certificates. So this serves the compliance part. And another is the voluntary market. So as we run the gas exchange, we have been in touch with all large buyers, large consumers of gas in the country, and specifically the MNC consumers, which have no industries put in by the MNCs. They are really keen to procure CBG because everyone has this green agenda to decarbonize their whole value chain. So they are saying that they already procure natural gas from the exchange, and they are very much interested that they would want to procure CBG, and they are ready to pay additional price also. So many a times they come to us that, can you help us get CBG traded? So that is currently we are constrained because one, there is no policy for CBG injection into the trunk pipelines or the main grid. Once you have CBG injection in the main grid, we can obviously trade CBG any day. Second is, we don't have any certificate kind of mechanism also, which can help them say they procure the grey gas and then a certificate separately, and the grey gas plus certificate, they can show that we have procured green. So that mechanism is also not there. So at least this mechanism should come first, where they are already procuring grey gas, they are ready to pay additional for a green certificate, so that they can produce, they can show to their management and investors that they are procuring green. So that is the idea on the voluntary side. So it is not just that the compliance market is waiting for getting benefit from such a scheme, but the voluntary market has also been waiting for such a scheme to come out. And we have seen similar things in the power sector, where a lot of voluntary entities also are now procuring RECs. So that is on the framework from the institutions and function side. Now there are, and when you get into the framework, there are a lot of contours or detailing which happens, and a lot of questions which come to mind. We have just put in here some of the important factors which will get discussed as and when the scheme gets in shape. So right now what we have proposed and what has been in discussions with the ministry and other bodies is these 4-5 factors and their related related proposals. So I'll start with the first one is the certificate price. So the first question which comes to everyone's mind is, what will be the certificate price? How will this be determined? Will there be a minimum price? Will there be a cap on the price? So how all these things will work? So the proposal here is that you trade the certificate on the exchange. The exchange has a robust price discovery mechanism which is already taking place for natural gas trading price discovery. So there what we do is we have a mechanism called double-sided uniform price auction. So we collect bids from both the sides. That is why it is double-sided. So buy side also bids, the sell side also bids, and everyone bids their best price. Because how the mechanism works is that the buyer will get the gas at a price which he has bid for, or a lesser price than that. For seller, he will get the price which he has asked or more than that price. So what happens is everyone optimizes and puts in their best bids, because if your bid doesn't get clear, then you are out of the market. So everyone puts in their best bid, the limiting price, and that is how then we draw demand curve, supply curve, and at the point where demand supply curve intersects, at that point we calculate the market clearing price and the market clearing volume at that price. And this market clearing price, which we discover after plotting demand and supply curves, this is the uniform price which is applicable to everyone. So you may bid anything, but at the end of it, what happens is a single price is discovered, which price is paid to all the buyers, and which price all the sellers get. Eventually what happens is, even if let's say a buyer has put $10 per MMBTU, but the market clearing price is, let's say, after discovery comes out to be $8 per MMBTU, then the buyer only has to pay $8 and not $10. And similarly for a seller, if he had, let's say, asked for $6 per MMBTU only, but the market clearing price has come out to be $8 per MMBTU, so he will not be paid $6, he will be paid higher than that, which will be $8 per MMBTU. So that is why people try to put in their limiting price, and that is how it was benefited through the double-sided closed auction mechanism. I'll come to how this trading happens in a timeline, hour by hour, what happens and how the price is discovered. So that is on the price discovery. So this price discovery is very robust, single price discovery. We pool in all the liquidity at one place, and that's how that helps in price discovery. If you don't have liquidity, then obviously sometimes there might not be any price discovery. So the idea is to pull in all the liquidity at one time at one place. Second is whether we should have floor price and ceiling price. So from a CBG producer's perspective, obviously we would want that there should be some minimum guarantee, some minimum assurance that at least this price will be paid to us, so that you can build it in your financial models and then to take it to your investors, and they get a comfort that at least this much price you will be able to get from this revenue stream. So that is the concept for the floor price. So we have advocated that yes, floor price should be there. Now the next question which comes is how do we determine floor price? So right now what we have suggested it that the floor price should be the price which gets you at least to your project feasibility. So let's say your project feasibility price is $20. If you get $20 per MMBTU, then your project is feasible. It can run profitably, or at least not in loss. So let's say that price is $20 per MMBTU. But currently you are getting, through the sale of gas, only $18 per MMBTU. Then there is a gap of just $2 per MMBTU. So at least $2 should be guaranteed from this additional revenue stream, so as to make your project feasible. So that is the idea for the floor price in a very basic sense. Of course, when you get into it, there are other factors which come into play, because each feedstock then has a different viability price, and there are different kinds of feedstock, and there are multiple financial engineering which can be done there. But the basic idea is this, and since there are multiple kind of feedstocks, what we can do is we can take a weighted average price, volume weighted average price. So all those things are there, and on the current price side which you are getting, then there also there are multiple mechanisms. Some people are selling under Satat, some are under CGD Synchro, some are directly selling. So what price to take from on the gray side, and the natural gas in itself, the gray natural gas, which is normal natural gas, which is getting traded in the grid, it also has a price, and those prices are also two. One is for the long term and one is for the short term. So long term prices are again also 2-3. Long term prices, if linked to Brent, they are something else. If linked to Henry Hub, they are something else. If linked to JKM index, they are something else. Coming to short term prices mostly are not linked to any index, but are based on the current demand supply situation. But there are multiple prices there. One is the price of the gas exchange, which we have now converted into an index, and we call it GIXI, the Gas Index of India. So that is one price for this, which can be used as a spot marker. And another spot marker is the West India marker, which is by Platts. So there are multiple prices on both these sides, and know which one to take, and those kind of discussions will obviously, it will evolve over time. But that is the basic idea which we have proposed right now. And one more thing about gas exchange, I forgot to tell you, because when we came to this topic of spot prices, so the gas exchange which we are running right now is for spot trading. So we facilitate trade. We have contracts ranging from intraday. So intraday is within day. If you need gas today, our market is open right now. You can log in. The market will be open till 3 p.m. If your bid gets cleared, you can get gas. The gas day runs from 6 a.m. to 6 a.m. So 6 a.m. morning today, the gas day has already started. It will run till 6 a.m. next day. So that is how gas days work across the globe. This is I don't know how this 6 a.m. has come, but it runs 6 a.m. to 6 a.m. So if you need for today's gas day, the market is open till 3 p.m. You can bid. If your bid gets cleared, we take care of all pipeline booking, pipeline capacity booking, and then finally the accounting, energy accounting, and then financial billing, and making sure the seller gets paid in time, and the buyer, making sure we collect from buyer in time. So we do a daily payment. So we collect from buyer and we give it to seller. The benefit to sellers on gas exchange is that we act as counterparty. So even if the buyer defaults, you will get your payment, and we make sure the buyer doesn't default. Second is we make payments daily. So typically what happens in the gas sector is you are used to payments which come over time. So if you have long-term contracts, then mostly billing happens every 15 days. So you get payments 15 days, and that also sometimes doesn't come in 15 days and then gets rolled over to the next 15-day cycle. But at the gas exchange, the cycle is daily. So we pay to the sellers daily, we collect from the buyers daily, and we pay it to the sellers daily. So that's how they can optimize their working capital cycle as well. So, and in terms of contracts which are available on the gas exchange, one, as I said, is intraday for within day, today's trading. Second is the day ahead. Day ahead is for tomorrow's gas day. So tomorrow 6 a.m. to next day 6 a.m. If you need gas, you can trade today. We'll make sure delivery happens. We'll collect money from you. We'll pay it to the seller. So that is for day ahead. Then similarly, we have one-day contracts as we go ahead from day ahead. So day ahead is tomorrow. Any day after tomorrow is a daily contract. So if you need for a specific day, which is not tomorrow but any other day, that will be in a daily contract. After daily, we have weekly contract. If you need for 1 week, then we have weekly contract. After weekly, we have fortnightly, monthly, and now we have recently taken approval for 3 months and 6 months contracts also. So that also we will start trading from February. So for gas needs of up to 6 months, and from a producer's perspective, you can sell your gas for up to 6 months. So what happens today is on the sell side, we mostly have RLNG importers, which are large importers like GAIL, IOCL, Shell, Petronet LNG. They trade on the gas exchange. Plus, we have a lot of domestic producers. These domestic producers are the ones who have wells on ground, and they extract gas and then they sell. So these people are like Reliance, Vedanta, these are also large entities, ONGC. So they have their gas fields and they extract gas within the ground and they come and sell. So we have benefited a lot to these domestic producers, because what happens in domestic production is you are not sure of your production, it varies daily. And let's say you have done a contract for 100 units, but you are getting 120 units today. So what do you do of the additional 20 units? One option is obviously you can offer that 20 units additional to your current set of buyers, but they might not be able to take it. And you can also back down, but you can back down to a limit only. So they didn't have any avenue to monetize these kind of fluctuations. And what used to happen with large producers like Reliance is that they have 100 buyers in their portfolio. So every time what happens is out of these 100, 1 or 2 will obviously shut down into maintenance or will not be able to take. So what to do of that volume? So with the coming of gas exchange, what has happened is they have been able to monetize these volumes at a very short notice. So Reliance does is, Reliance, Vedanta, ONGC, in fact, all the 3 domestic gas producers, they do it very often because their production profile is never flat. So they daily come to the exchange and they put a volume. For them, it's an incremental volume, but for an exchange, it's a good volume, and for the buy side also, it's a good volume. So these kind of transactions we have been able to facilitate. And these domestic gas producers, they have gone on record and they have said that it's because of the gas exchange they have been able to save thousands of crores. And sometimes they had to, in fact, flare this gas also if they were not able to monetize. So that flaring has also come down, although the data is not there because no one admits how much they used to flare. But that flaring has also come down. So these kind of market mechanisms, when they are there, they benefit the whole industry and the country and the economy. So that is the idea. If we have market mechanisms on the CBG side also, see, you should have always options. You should have options for tying up long-term, medium-term, short-term, market-based. All the options should be available to producers, and it's up to them through what route they want to monetize their produce. So that was about the gas exchange. Now coming back to these contours, we discussed floor price. Another contour is ceiling price. So from a producer's perspective, floor price is important. Similarly, from a buyer's perspective, he will say you should also put a ceiling price. Buyer in the sense, the mandated entities, the CGD entities in this case, they will say that there should be a ceiling price also because the price might rise to anything tomorrow and then I'll be exposed, I'll have to buy at that price. So, but that case will not come here because we have anyways proposed for a penalty for non-compliance. So what will happen is not all entities obviously will be able to procure as per their mandates, and there will be some non-compliances. So how to deal with those non-compliances? So the idea is in the start itself you put a penalty for non-compliance. If you show a penalty and which is higher enough, which is a deterrent enough, then obviously people will try to comply and not go into non-compliance. So what we have proposed is, as in terms of penalty, that if you keep it, let's say 2 times of the floor price, and that should be deterrent enough for people to comply to this scheme. If you don't have any penalty, then the scheme obviously doesn't work, because without penalty, how can you ensure mandates?
Yeah, I just want to compliment here. So the current order by MOPNG mentions the obligation, but does not mention a penalty. And to us, that is a big lacuna. Because this is something that the RE market also witnessed. When the RPO obligations were released in 2003, the distribution companies were mandated to buy RE power, but if they did not, there was no commensurate penalty mechanism. So for the first 5 or 6 years in renewables, the demand was lacking because of non-penalty. For us in CBG, it is of extreme importance to push for this penalty implementation to be there from the first day itself. Otherwise, the obligation literally is on paper. And like I said, or we are assessing, the first fiscal seems doable, right? The demand supply will match. But after that, if your supply is not coming online, and also there is no penalty on the obligation, then the market mechanisms will not be working well. Yeah. Back to you, Ravi.
Yeah. So let's say if we keep a penalty for non-compliance, which is 2 times of the floor price, then what happens is obviously people will comply. There will be deterrent enough for them to comply. Second is then you don't need a ceiling price. because if you kept the penalty as 2 times of floor price, and let's say the price of the certificate goes beyond 2 times floor price, then the entity will say, I will rather not comply and pay a penalty of 2x rather than buying the certificate at 2.5x. So a ceiling price, that's why we propose, is not required if you put a penalty in place. A penalty will serve two critical purposes. Second is compliance check. At what frequency do you check for compliance? So the compliance is obviously an annual compliance, but the problem is if you leave it to annual checking, it will be at the end of the year that people will rush to buy and people will rush to comply, and then there will be multiple scenarios which we will not like to happen. So it's better to have a quarterly check on compliances, and although the mandate can be on an annual basis, but you keep a check on quarterly basis and ask them to comply on a quarterly basis. And similarly, we can facilitate trading also. Right now, we have proposed trading for, we'll come to it, but we have proposed monthly trading. So what happens is we have seen it in power sector also, but that when it comes to, when the compliance period is coming to end, that is when people come to buy, and for the whole year, there is no trading happening. And eventually towards the end, all the trading is happening, and then sometimes there is short supply and all those things. Trading, I said, will be on the gas exchange. Trading frequency, I was saying, currently we have designated, let's say, we will keep it monthly, because one is, it doesn't make sense to trade this very often, because it's a commodity which has a shelf life. The certificate has a shelf life. It's not like you need to trade daily. So you can keep it monthly, and monthly we can designate a day. So the idea is to pool a lot of liquidity at one place at one time. So if you keep it monthly, then you can expect that monthly volumes will be pooled in at one day. And if you break that into shorter durations, let's say if you keep it weekly, then the liquidity obviously becomes 1/4. So we would want to be somewhere middle, so that you also provide opportunity for people to comply on a monthly basis, and you also pool in liquidity on a monthly basis. Retrading, the policies currently don't talk about whether retrading should be allowed or not, but our proposal is that it should be allowed, because what will happen is most of the times some entity would have procured more than what they require. So let's say in some CGD GAs where there's a lot of CBG available, so he would have obviously procured more than his mandates, then he should be allowed to retrade that certificate. So that, and this will also help in bringing liquidity to the market. This is a typical value chain from a scheme perspective, that how it will happen, and this has been taken from the currently running REC scheme in the power sector. So what happens is in the registry you sign up as a CBG producer, you get registered, and then once you are registered, the registry keeps a mechanism where they do energy accounting and certificate issuance on a frequency which they deem fit. And then once you issue certificates, then you can either retain them or you can transfer them, trade them, and we have also said you can retrade them until they are redeemed by someone. So people who will redeem will be at the end of the life cycle, at the end of the consumption value chain. So it will be in the compliance market, it will be your CGD entities who have mandates, who will come for redemption. For voluntary entities which they want to show their green procurement, they will come and redeem. But until redeemed, the certificate shall be open to trading. And the certificate should also have a validity. Since the mandate is yearly, the certificate should also have a 1-year validity. Because if you keep validity open more than 1 year, people will not come for trading, they will keep the certificates with them. So the idea is to match the validity with the compliance period. So if the compliance period is 1 year, the validity should also be 1 year. This is on the trading side. This is a typical flow diagram of how the trading happens and what entities are involved and how they interact with each other. So this is basically simple. The trading is happening at a gas exchange. That's why the gas exchange is at the center. And we pull in liquidity from both buy and sell side. So we pull in bids from the buyers, and the buyers here, as I said, can be voluntary or obligated entities. On the sell side, there are CBG producers, because CBG producers are getting issued the certificates. So they will come and put in their bids. We will interact with the registry because the registry is electronic. What we need to do is, because once you come in and let's say you put as offer for sale, if you put a bid for sale of 1,000 units of certificates, we need to check whether you own those 1,000 units of certificates or not. So that check, we will keep a mechanism with the CRB, which is the registry. And once we have traded the certificates, we will immediately send that information to the registry back, so that they can make a change in the ownership of the certificate in the registry. And we will also send that information to buyers and sellers that, these many certificates have been sold, these have been bought at this price, and this is the invoice, this is the money to be paid, this is money to be collected. And a report for the market. This is very important, because the market should come to know what is the current price at which the certificates are available, what is the current volumes which are available on the exchange. So that gives an idea for people to come to trade. This is just a flow diagram. Let's say if trading, we keep a designated day. We'll have to define a designated day so that people wait for that day and all come in at that one time. So let's say we have kept the day as the last Wednesday of every month. So what will happen on the Wednesday of that month is that people will come, they will put in their bids on the buy and sell side. The market clearing, as I said, will be through a closed double-sided auction, as I had explained. So people will put bids. We will run that double-sided auction market from, let's say, 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. So from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. we typically do is this, we do for gas also currently, that from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. we are just collecting bids. So from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. you are only putting your bids, and you can modify those bids. Till 3 p.m. you can modify the bids. And what happens is 1 to 3 p.m. is we display the best 5 or best 5 sell bids. So you get an idea that whether you have chance of clearing or getting your bids cleared or not. We are also implementing certain tools there that will show you that what percentage of your bids is getting cleared right now. So we don't show currently, because this trading is anonymous, we don't show names of any entities on the buy and sell side. We only show volumes which are available and at what price. So you can modify, you can better your bids till 3 p.m. But at 3 p.m. is what happens is we close the market. We close the market, we run our double-sided auction mechanism wala engine. That engine takes its own time. It's a bit complicated software. So, but before that, in this case, we have to keep a check, which we have kept at 12 hours, because in the current trades which we are doing, we don't need to check for the ownership of the commodity. And how do we maintain that is we collect pre-trade margins from the sellers. So if someone is coming to put a sell of 1,000, he has to deposit 100 rupees before putting a bid of 1,000. So that is a check there. But here we'll have to keep a physical check, that if you are coming for putting a sell bid of 1,000 units of certificates, we'll have to ensure that you own those 1,000 units of certificates. So we have kept that check with the registry. So we will ask the registry to send us the ownership data as on 12 p.m. that day. And this will happen through APIs, so it will be seamless. And we will integrate that data into our trading software. So once you come for bid, you will know your limits, because we have collected your ownership data from the registry, and that will show that you currently own only 1,000 certificates, so you can only put a sell for 1,000 certificates. So that check we have talked with the registry, so that will be done. By 3 p.m. we finalize the trade. By 3:30 p.m. we finalize the trade, and by 4 p.m. we send, as I said, we send the data to registry, buyers, sellers, invoices generated. Payment we do same day. So you receive the payment same day by evening or next day morning. Another concept is, because this will, when you go to see these guidelines, or when you go to any forum, people will talk of these, some of these terms, and I'll just give a brief on these terms so that you are aware. So these two terms which people will talk is mass balance and book and claim. So what these two mean is very important. I'll start with book and claim. So what happens in book and claim mechanism is that you separate the certificate and the commodity from each other, and they become tradable separately. So in what we have been discussing till now is book and claim method. So what you have done is you have the green component, you have converted it into a certificate, and that you have then you have separated the certificate from the commodity. So commodity you can sell separately, certificate you can sell separately. So both the streams you can monetize separately. So that is known as book and claim. Mass balancing, what happens is both of them flow together. And this will also happen in India. We will create a market for mass balance also. Mass balance mein your commodity, gas plus the certificate. the green certificate, they will flow together, and it will become green gas then. So, so right now what we are saying is ki, if you separate the certificate and you do certificate only trading at exchange, this is book and claim method, and this market we will start this year as and when this guidelines become operational. And another one, which is the book and claim, that we can start later. There what we will do is we will create a separate, so we have current market where we are trading natural gas, and that is grey or brown natural gas. But for you, what we will do is, once the certificates are in place, then we can do is we can trade your gas along with the certificate. So then we will call it green gas trading. So it will be a separate market where green gas will be traded. Based on demand supply, we expect that price will be higher than what people are getting for the current natural gas, because it has that green component, and that is certified by the certificate, and that certificate is flowing with the commodity together with it. That's why mass balance. So in power we have done the same thing. Power, there is a separate green market today, there where green power is traded, and people are ready to pay premium for the green power versus the brown power. And similarly, as I said, we have a lot of queries from MNCs already. They are ready to pay premium for green gas. So what they are looking for is basically mass balance trading on exchange. So currently we can't do that, but once the certificates are in place, we'll push for other mechanisms. One of the mechanisms there, another required will be open access. We'll push for that also, but slowly and slowly these things will move forward and should help the producers, and when it helps the producers, it will help the segment grow. That is only the way that you can grow this segment further, if you allow market-based mechanisms to take over and all these controls to be slowly released. This is just and ma'am has already discussed a case study on what happened in the power sector, so we can draw some inspirations from there, and what all frameworks are there, how it flowed, how they started. So they also started discussions in 2008, and so you can go through these timelines. And the idea here is they also we are in the same phase when they started discussions. We are also in the same phase, and then it was in March 2011 when they started trading of certificates on IEX. So here we are looking at something like this year 2025 we should be able to start trading of certificates on IGX. And there I showed this table for RGCs, and this is the similar table for RECs. So there they have regulator CRC. Their registry operator is the system operator. They had this benefit, they had a system operator there, and a lot of data was already getting collected, and there was mechanism, there were systems in place to collect data, because these entities were grid connected. And here we don't have those systems in place, SCADA and all. So that will be a bit difficult, but anyways it is not that difficult. So and the trading there happens on power exchanges. Power exchanges we have 3 in the country right now. Gas exchange, incidentally, we only have 1 right now. So there people have option to go to any of the 3 exchanges. And these are some of the figures of IEX on renewable energy certificates trading. So last year they traded about 2 crores REC certificates in FY24. That is kind of volume. The volume there is very high. They have done something, they have released the validity, so the certificates are now there available for lifetime. And these are some of the case studies. So as I said, this is not something new which we are proposing, and that's what we always say to the ministry and other agencies, that all these things are already taking place, and they have in fact helped. If you go deeper and study some of these countries, you will understand that mechanisms like these certificate mechanisms, or GOs as they call it, they have in fact helped the sector, the CBG sector, grow there. In these, especially European countries, US. So we can draw a lot of inspiration, and we can also frame our guidelines and our frameworks accordingly. So that is the idea here. And they also had a lot of other market-based mechanisms which have helped their sector grow. So you can also go through these slides, and they will give you some idea. These are the list of some of the registries which are available. So in Europe, each country has its own mechanism, registry, and some countries they have common registries. And trading there happens, you can trade within the country, you can trade outside country also. So there is European Energy Exchange, EEX, which facilitates trading across Europe. So you can do that, or there are country specific platforms, like we know for Austria, There is a platform called CEGH, Central European Gas Hub. So they have a separate this thing also, green gas platform, which I was talking on mass balance. So you can specifically trade green gas also there. So there are a lot of platforms there available, a lot of registries, and everything has been happening. In some countries, more than 10 years, this has been in place. So a lot of learnings to be, you can we go through these slides also. So this is what the idea which we wanted to present. Any questions that we can take?
No, I'll just allow me to summarize. So I think some of the crucial next steps on this would be, because it is going to be an additional revenue for the producer, the scheme guidelines from the ministry are crucial, and the work will now be to get these guidelines rolled out. And most importantly, what Ravi is mentioning is that the gas certificate should be announced on a book and claim basis. What that would do is it will allow the CBG producer to monetize the gas sale and the certificate price separately, thereby adding to their revenue stream significantly. If it's a mass balance method, then just the gas price itself includes the price of the certificate. So therefore, our efforts are going to be to bring these operational guidelines in place, and hopefully by April we'll have a better picture than what we have today. Thank you. We can take questions. Yeah.
Just one quick question. So just also for clarification purpose. So once you get this, can you get carbon credits and the green gas? You already asked.
Yeah, I just want to follow up on that. If I set a floor price, and the floor price is the equivalent of to make my project viable, by definition, therefore, I can't get additionality, right?
Yeah, ideally no. So, but there could be, so you're right. So I think additionality is going to be a key principle here. With the two revenue streams from carbon offsets, and this may not be possible. But like we said, there are certain projects that may not be participating in the gas exchange and taking the monetization of the attribute, of the green attribute. Those can get registered in the carbon markets.
This option will be available to the producers whether they want to monetize through one route or to the other route. Obviously, we have to choose one route.
Yeah.
But presumably, you'd be better off trying to get your project registered now for carbon credits, because there would be, and presumably if it was eligible, and then once that was the case and you were getting that, presumably you could therefore get into this scheme, right?
So once this scheme comes online, and once you come to register for this scheme, so this scheme should have this check in place that whether you are taking some other benefit or not. If you are taking that, if you are under that benefit, then you will not be able to register in this scheme.
Yeah.
And
but I can tell you that under the carbon markets, the CBG methodology is absent at the moment.
And
they have no idea of how to check the additionality. They have no idea of how to even declare the eligibility of certain projects. And that's what the Bureau has come back and said, that we would be open to getting a methodology for CBG because of and the submission had been from our side that, look, projects are going to come expeditiously in the next fiscal. So we need to look at a methodology. So if there's anything that you would recommend, we'll happy to place it in front of the Bureau for their consideration.
Then I had a follow-up question. If relating to entities outside the controlled entities. So if I'm Toyota and I'm, say, burning 10 tons of natural gas today, if I buy a certificate and then I have to report to Japan or whatever it is, Korea, my Scope 1 emissions, if I buy a renewable energy, a CBG certificate, can I use that certificate to be able to reduce my Scope 1 emissions?
Then in this guideline, we will have to we'll have to incorporate that, because see what is happening, that is happening in the carbon market also, because each country has its own ways of accounting, and there's no common platform yet in terms of accounting. So till that is not reached, it will be very difficult.
I think currently the mechanism is to help compliance for CGD entities.
Yes.
For the CNGB, yes.
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 Not for the wider.
No, it's not.
No, but
It's
that option is kept open. If you find it feasible enough, you take it.
See, I think the obligation, the CBG blending obligation is on CNG, PNG entities. For the other industrial players, the obligation really is not there. So for them, it is a voluntary participation in the certificate market. And The question that you're asking is a very relevant question, but that also ties back into Article 6 and the multilateral and the multinational agreements, how they will do the carbon accounting for projects that are registered here, getting offsets here, how are they going to show it there? So, in all honesty, that's not been thought out in such details.
Yes.
And we'll be happy to progress on that discussion if there's some recommendation coming up, and we can place that in front of them.
Because particularly in I know India's target is 2070, but for companies that want to get to net zero outside these particular entities, then this could be a very useful mechanism for that, couldn't it?
It should be. It should be.
Okay, thank
I
you.
have 3-4 questions which are all interrelated. First and the foremost, I would like to know what is the basis for awarding this certificate? Is it based on the volume of gas that we produce, based on MMBTU? And also, what is the periodical certificates being issued, whether it is being done on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, or a monthly basis? How is it done? And what is the life of this certificate? And now you are talking about obligated entities, if they don't lift it, they will have to pay penalties and things like that. How do they pay their penalty? Are they going to pay the penalty by buying these credits at twice the floor price, or are they going to be paying it to government, in the form of money or something like that? Then the interest of the eligible entity is not going to be served out, because your certificate, the validity may lose. This has happened in case of renewable electricity kind of thing, where people, it expired and they were never be able to sell it. They were never be able to monetize it. Okay. So how are these issues being, addressed here? And one other important aspect is, if the obligated entities are by any chance not able to take this certificate and we are not able to sell the certificate within the expiry time, is it possible for the CBG producers to use the certificate to pay their taxes?
That's not the current framework. We've not thought of that. I'll probably request Ravi to take most of the other questions.
On your questions, one by one, the certificate should be issued based on net production, right? And the net production can be in terms of MMBTU. What we have proposed is one certificate is equivalent of 1 MMBTU of net production. So 1 MMBTU of net production should get you one certificate. Related to the frequency of issuance of certificates, that totally depends on the technology you are using for energy accounting. So if you are able to put in, that depends on the registry. If you are able to put in place technology which can map the data daily, they can issue it daily. But right now I don't think that is feasible for them, so they will do something probably on a monthly basis. And that too, what they are currently thinking is they will take data from you first and then verify that data, instead of they going and putting in some metering equipments at your place. So it will be kind of monthly thing to start with. Regarding the validity, it will be 1 year. The certificate validity will be a mandate, will be on a yearly basis. And people who are not in terms of penalty, so people who are mandated, they will, in terms of options, they will have, in terms of the order of those options, will be first they can procure CBG directly to meet their mandates. If they are not able to procure CBG directly, they will come for the certificates market and they will procure certificates to meet their mandates. If they are not even able to do that also, then there will be a penalty on them, which will be, let's say, 2 times the floor price. So this will be money paid by them to the registry. Registry, let's say, keeps a corpus of this money. And at the same time, some producers are not able to, let's say, monetize their certificates. So this money in a way should flow to compensate those people whose certificates have been left. So that kind of mechanism has to be built in place.
No, that's what I'm saying. Have you applied your mind on that? Is it part of that
Sir,
mechanism that you are talking about?
So like we mentioned, right now there is no penalty that the order mentions in the MOPNG order. But when the scheme guidelines are being discussed with PPAC, which is the nodal agency on behalf of the ministry, we've made it clear that a penalty mechanism is imperative for the obligation to actually be an obligation. And now we go back and make a detailed proposal on what those guidelines should look like. So whatever proposals you saw today is what we are going to include in terms of the penalty provisions. And what Ravi explained is the proposal. So we will definitely table it and we are going to support it to be able to make the obligations a real obligation in the real sense. And that's a key learning from the renewable sector, that the renewable purchase obligations were really not an obligation because the penalties were not reinforced.
So, sir, regarding your questions, so all these questions, so because we have been in regular touch with the regulator, which is PNGRB, because PNGRB is an agency where we are required to meet on a very frequent basis, and they have also been deliberating on these things. Although the guidelines has mentioned that there will be a certain role of regulator, the scope of that role is not defined, but they are also thinking along these lines, because if that role comes to them that they have to define penalty and collect penalty, and then what should be the mechanism for the utilization of that penalty amount. So all those questions are there, similar questions are there in their mind also. And what I just said, we have given that proposal to PNGRB, the regulator at least, and once we further discuss with the other agency, which is PPSC, with similar suggestions we are going to give to them also.
Benefit for mid-sized companies, is there a provision that could be made here?
See, the obligation, if you read the order, is clearly saying it is under the CGD scheme, the CNG, PNG entities. And to us, the ambit of these obligated entities is very small. Right? I started by saying that the obligation can be easily met next financial year. So to come back to your question, the obligation is not going to be applicable to these small players. So for them, CBG is fairly going to be a voluntary business. They are not covered by this regulation, or they are not covered by the obligation to participate in the certificate market. Yes, that's right.
Like one question to Ravi regarding how do you make for electricity, it is very like straightforward in terms of like supplying. So if I'm a buyer in Tamil Nadu, I can buy from Gujarat and it flows very fast. But how do you do it for gas when it's grid is not allowed and all those things? Then you said payments are done within a day. Then like how does it happen in actual practice? Are you like paying on the behalf of the buyer and then collecting money from the buyer?
Got it. So
then the third question is about this Carbon Masters and other some producers, they are using bottling units. So they produce gas, they clean gas, and then they have bottling units that they sell to, let's say, industrial consumer or to restaurants and all. So when they are doing this type of small projects, how will they be eligible for this renewable gas certificate, or it is only for larger producers who are feeding into the pipelines and then they are getting audited easily? Because in that case, I mean, one can physically go and see and get the records checked that okay, so many cylinders of biogas was supplied from this plant to the hotels and restaurants, but it will be difficult to do it on a very regular basis. For example, in carbon credits, they do audit once in a year or once in 6 months.
So the scheme currently doesn't talk of any limitations in terms of the size of the plant or in terms of connectivity to the grid or not connected. So as long, and this is for the CBG certificate, so as long as you are producing CBG, you should be able to get the certificates on them, irrespective of the mode you are selling through. That is on the third. Second question, you talked on the payment cycle at the exchange. So how do we maintain daily cycle is that we collect from, so for deliveries happening today, the gas which has been delivered today or is being delivered today, the buyer will pay us one day in advance. So for deliveries happening today, we have already collected money yesterday. And by the end of today, we will credit that money to the seller. So the money comes a day before, remains with us for one day, and the next day it is with the seller. And we maintain that cycle, and that cycle has never been broken because we have mechanisms in place. All the risk management mechanisms are in place. We have already, what we do is from the buyer, we already collect some 10% or 20% of the margin. So if he doesn't give, let's say for one day's payment, we have that margin in place. So we take money from that margin out, then pay you, and there no default has happened. And even if it happens, then we have a waterfall mechanism to secure the sell side.
And supply is made after the payment. If I am a seller,
No, so what happening is today, because we are trading in pipeline gas, right, which is in the grid. So in the grid, it is assumed that it is happening at the same time. So if he is drawing right now, you are injecting right now in the grid. So you are injecting in the grid today, and he is drawing from the grid today. So it is happening at the same time.
Yeah, I think we'll close this session. Two more important topics to come up. Basically, we are trying to identify areas how the industry can get support, maybe by way of some financial assistance, and at the same time create more revenue streams to make the project viable. So one important topic that IFGE had advocated with MOPNG, and they brought a scheme, was on biomass aggregation machinery. Some of the plant operators have already taken benefit of that. We have from RE Energy, Mr. Rampal. Mr. Rampal is here. Yeah.